Hi guys, my name is Wendy and this is my story. So I grew up in a really big family. I'm Chinese, we speak Cantonese at home, and there's 6 of us. So there's myself, my 4 sisters and my brother. So growing up, I've actually remember really good things. You know, we always used to hang out with all our family and friends, you know, over the weekend, we'd have barbecues, catch up. My dad would be playing mahjong with his friends and I'll just be hanging around with all my cousins. And yeah, it was good. I think like just growing up with so many sisters at the time, my brother wasn't born yet, I'd always be responsible for them. Well, it made sense, right? Because I was their older sister. But I remember mum and dad always like working a lot and we'd always have to try entertain ourselves. So it got to a point where I think I was like the instigator, because my parents always tell me that I was like a devil child. And I'd always like rope my sisters into doing things, and sometimes it would actually land me into the hospital. So my parents tell me that apparently like one time I drank a whole bottle of like jewelry cleaner. Like this is like silver jewelry cleaner, and I roped my sister into doing it. So we landed ourselves in hospital, getting our stomachs pumped. And another time we were just mucking around, and I remember my grandparents yelling at us, was like, you know, stay away from like this thing that they were cooking. And it was just a massive pot with hot water. And we were just mucking around, I didn't listen. Ended up falling into the water, so I kind of like boiled my arm off. But those were some of the things that, you know, I did growing up. You know, I was really cheeky, apparently. I don't agree with them, but yeah, it was fun. Like I remember, you know, mum and dad always instilled the idea of family. Everything was about family, you know, to always put family first. And as I grew up, you know, I started to understand the responsibilities of being an older sister. A lot of the times I would say they were unfair responsibilities, because even though I was nowhere near my sisters, I'd still get in trouble for my sisters getting hurt, or if they didn't do any chores or things like that. But then other times, they were my fault. So I remember one time, I think I was in year 5 or 6, my sister, Stephanie, she was starting prep. And the day before my dad was like, you know, you have to take your sister to class. I'm not gonna do it. You guys have the responsibilities of older sisters, you know, to take your sister to class. So school started, and normally like when school starts, everybody just jumps on the playground and, you know, plays at the playground before school starts, and then you hang around with your friends, and then when the school bell rings, you like scream and run to class. And all I remember was between 8:45 a.m. and 3:15 p.m. I was just being a good student, you know, studying, doing my thing at school. And then when the bell rang, we ran to the spot where dad or mum would normally come pick us up, and dad was there. And I just remember running, but then kind of like slowing down as I was running towards him, because we kind of like made eye contact. But it was that kind of eye contact where I knew I was going to die. And anyways, I ended up going up to dad and I was like, hey dad, like what's wrong? And he spoke to me in Chinese, like, and literally said, Wendy, wait till we get home. And growing up in an like a Chinese family, when your parents speak to you in Chinese, you know you're screwed. And you know, and it was like, my dad also used my Chinese name. So I knew like I was gonna die, because there's 3 levels, right? So there's your English name, your full name in English, and then your Chinese name. And when you hit that Chinese name, you're dead. Anyways, get home, and I think I died like 6 times that day with my sisters, because it turns out my dad didn't trust us, and went back to the school just to double check if my sister Stephanie was in class, and turned out he found her walking around the school while everyone else was in class by herself. She wasn't crying or anything like that, so it wasn't really that bad. But yeah, like we copped it. And what made it even worse was we copped it a second time because Mum came home. And yeah, I just remember the whole talk about, being responsible as an older sister, making sure, I had to keep an eye out on all my sisters. That was like probably one of the worst things that happened. She's fine now. She's, I don't think it was that bad now that I look back at it. But yeah, just growing up, like I said, just having to have that responsibility kind of kicked into me at a very young age, kind of moved me to a certain point in my life that I'll talk, later about. But so, yeah, just growing up, teenager, I was really independent because my parents taught us how to be really independent because they were never really home. But they always told us that, if you wanted to be successful, you had to find your own money, work for yourself. You couldn't rely on anyone. Like, I couldn't even rely on my own parents because they were like, you got to do this all on your own. And I think it was like 9 months was when I first got my first job at McDonald's, and I pretty much worked every weekend while I studied in high school. And I think I started noticing a lot more things happening around the house. So like I paid more attention to like the little arguments my mum and dad would have. And sometimes that'd be about money. And then I'd also remember mum talking about materialistic things, or like, fights that she'll have with relatives and things like that. Like, I didn't think about it too much, but it got to a point where I was just like, I'm just gonna ignore it because it's a lot to take in sometimes, So it was like, high school, year 11 and 12, I figured out what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an artist, and that was like my passion. Like, I loved art, and I wanted to, grow up and have my own art studio, paint, draw, do whatever I wanted, sell my artwork. But my parents never agreed with my choices. And with Chinese parents, they pretty much have your life set out for you. But I guess it's because of how they kind of grew up, in a very like old way. Back in the day, my parents didn't really have much, and they thought getting a good job, earning money was the way to go. But it was obviously a bit different here in Australia. But they kind of told me that I had to become a doctor or an accountant, and my ADA score had to be 99.95. That was never going to happen. I hate blood, 1, and 2, accountants, it's a boring job. Like, I'm not going to do that. And 99.95 was like, to me, was like impossible. But I remember having like so many arguments with my family, like especially my mum, because she was like, you can't be an artist. It's a dead man's job. And essentially that means like, she was like, you can only make money once you die. And she's like, what's the point of that? But back then, because I was so independent and I was quite confident, I was like, I'm gonna do this. I don't care what you say. Like, I just want to be happy. I don't care about money or anything like that. So after high school, I ended up graduating high school, getting into uni, and I studied a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and it was exactly what I wanted to do. But the worst part about it was that nobody was really happy for me. Like, my parents, they didn't really have that kind of, happiness for me the way I did about getting into the course that I wanted. And like, the thing that they did the most was always compare me to other kids. So if I had like extended relatives, these are like my cousins' who were in this, like the same year level as I was at the time, or got into uni, they'd be like, why couldn't you be this person? Look at this person doing that. And a lot of relatives as well would also do the same thing. I guess it's a really old Chinese way of thinking, but they would ask me, they're like, so, heard you got into uni, like, what do you study? And I'm like, I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm like, I'm studying a Bachelor of Fine Arts. And like, typical Asian mode, they're like, oh, finance. And I'm like, what? It's fine art. And they're like, what's that? And then they'll be like, I'd be like, it's like painting and drawing. And they'd look at me and they'd be like, what does that give you? So there was a lot of that. But to be honest, I was doing what I loved, so I didn't really care too much about, what they were thinking. But I guess my mum especially would, sometimes she would kind of hype up what I was doing a little bit more than what it seemed like it was, just because she wanted us to look a certain way to family members. And in Chinese there's this saying, if you translate it, it's called saving face, and essentially it's pretty much like your reputation. And my mum really cared about her reputation and how her kids looked to other people, how we presented ourselves, all that kind of stuff. She really cared, but to me, I honestly tried to distance myself from that kind of thinking, and I was just I'm doing something I love, so I shouldn't really focus. I don't know why my mum was thinking that way, but couldn't help. I couldn't do anything about that. So once I got into uni, studied for 3 years, ended up graduating uni, which was pretty cool, but the only downside to it all was the fact that I absolutely hated art. Uni made me hate my passion, and it was completely something I didn't what I was learning was not what I was expecting, and a lot of the lecturers I had were kind of depressing and not really as motivating as my high school teachers. So then I decided to get a full-time job because I knew that if I wasn't studying, I had to do something. So yeah, ended up finding a full-time job, and that's pretty much where my problems with my mum kind of developed even more. I think one time I remember coming home, and I had a really, really late shift, and I was really hungry. I hadn't been home all day, and I finally had time to just sit down and eat dinner. And she just walked up to me and asked me why I was eating dinner if I wasn't paying rent. And I was like, are you for real? I just started my job. And I never had any issues with paying rent because, there's nothing wrong with helping out your family. But I found that ever since I got a full-time job, she was always nagging me about money. It was it'd be nice if you contributed to something. And I'm like, I do. How much money do you want from me? I only earn so much. And then, a lot of times we'd end up fighting because it actually get me. I'm working my butt off, and she'd just pull the whole, we've got no money card, or just make me feel like crap. And then a week later, she'd be rocking an LV bag. And to me, I was like, that makes no sense. How do you turn around and tell me, put this kind of pressure on me, and tell me that we have no money, and then go around and buy all these materialistic things? So a lot of the times, I'd have all these arguments, and it started getting really bad, really physical. I had a couple of knives pulled on me, started getting physical with my sisters because they, didn't really understand too much at the time, but because I was such a hothead, I was a hothead. My sisters could definitely vouch for me. Anything would set me off. My mum was unreasonable, or she said something or talked about money, I would lose my mind. I would be throwing things, throwing chairs, or just trying to beat my mum up, or my sisters up. And it just got to a point where it was just too much for me to handle. Because every time I'd get home, I'd try to avoid coming home actually, but every time I did come home, something would be said about that. So, my brother was born at that time as well, and it was really bad because some of the fights my brother would see as well. So I didn't want that. So I ended up moving out with my ex-boyfriend at the time. And yeah, I tried to distance myself from my family a lot because I felt I wasn't part of the family. I felt like an outcast. And yeah, I just focused on my career, ended up going back to study just to build my career even more. And I ended up, started traveling around the world, which is what I've always wanted to do. And yeah, like I felt like I could only rely on myself. Nobody else helped me. And every time I came home during those times, like again, it always just end up in fights, and I'd continue to like distance myself from my family. I wouldn't go home for like months on end. I wouldn't talk to my parents or my mum, my sisters. When I did come home, it was only just to see my brother, or it was because, you know, my sisters would call me and be like, hey, we need your help. Like that was another thing, like being the older sister, every time they called me, I knew that it wasn't because they wanted to ask me how I was doing. It was because they needed my help. Like something either went wrong or they needed my help, and it was up to me to fix everything. You know, there were times where I could say like the situations got really bad and I had to, you know, rush home from work just to see if everybody was okay, and just trying to like piece together what happened, try to fix things. So I just remember like that year I was like making New Year's resolutions. I was like, I don't know who I was talking to, but I just remember in the middle of like Federation Square, and I was just like, all right, this year is gonna be my year. I'm gonna be kicking more goals, no more family drama. But then that didn't happen. So every year I felt like someone was like on my shoulder telling me that everything I was doing to fix the fix the problems that my family had wasn't working, but I always managed to find like a band-aid solution just to solve it for the time being. So I remember I was in Orlando getting ready to go to Disney World. It was 7 a.m. and I was like real excited. I get a call from my sisters and I'm like, crap, they're calling me, they never call me, and I'm in America, like I'm halfway across the world. Anyway, so they call me and they just told me straight out, they're like, Mum's leaving Dad. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, like we've known this for 2 weeks. And then I like lost my mind. I was like, if you knew this 2 weeks ago, why didn't you tell me? Like I only left a week ago, like I just don't understand like why you guys didn't tell me. And they were like, my sisters were saying, you know, you're going on holiday, we didn't want to put this kind of pressure on you. And my thing back then was, if you tell me earlier, I'd be able to fix your problem earlier. So we don't have to, you know, pick up more pieces along the way. So I just remember being in the hotel room, just losing my mind, just throwing things and just swearing. And I remember messaging my mum and I was like, you're gonna die. And she didn't say anything. So then I ended up rushing home. And I remember I was on the plane. Like this is a 26-hour flight. Like I was on the plane and I was like imagining every single scenario that was gonna happen. You know, what I was gonna say to Mum, like what I was gonna do. Like I imagined like what I was gonna do if like she said certain words that would just trigger me so hard. And I was like, man, I think I'm gonna like end up beating her and I'm gonna regret it really bad. Anyway, so I just rushed home. I was so jet lagged. It was, I was just so jet lagged, but I ended up rushing back to my parents' house, and my dad was there because he knew that like he needed to control me. And I was really patient at the beginning with Mum until I couldn't see any reasoning behind what she was saying or the reasons that she was giving me. And to me, essentially, I just saw someone that was just gonna give up a family. And what bothered me even more was the fact that my brother was only 2 years old. So to have her just want to pack up her bags and just leave, dust off the responsibilities of parenthood, that triggered me so much. And I remember looking at her and I was like, I'm gonna make your life hell. Like I'm gonna make sure when you grow old, you're gonna have nothing. And you know, she was quite emotional. She was just like, you know, you need to understand it from my side. And to me, like, I was just projecting what I learnt over the years from her, like what she taught me about family. You know, family sticks together no matter what, you know, even through thick and thin, we're still family. And, you know, I felt like she wasn't doing that. And I felt like she was she was a hypocrite and I couldn't handle that. So I stopped talking to my mum for 3 years. I didn't look at her, I didn't speak to her. Like, there were times when she went to hospital, I didn't even ask her how she was. Like, honestly, didn't care. She was literally like erased from my life. And that year, like my sisters ended up, my sisters and my dad ended up building a relationship with her. So my dad was able to co-parent with her. My sisters will be able to, just have their mum and be in like a talking kind of relationship, obviously with their boundaries. But with me, I was just like, nah, she's dead to me. I don't have a mum. Again, New Year's comes. I was like, okay, cool. Everything's like quiet down. I was like, I don't know who am I speaking to again. This time I was on the bridge, right across from Flinders Street Station, and I was like, this year's, I'm gonna have an awesome year, no more drama, just let me have a quiet year. That didn't happen. My grandma ended up passing away, and my grandma, who was on my dad's side, she was one of my best friends. And I remember getting a call from one of my cousins, and he was like, you gotta get down to the hospital, grandma's not doing so well. And at the time, like, grandma was always in and out of hospital, so I didn't think too much of it. But this time, I knew something was different, because when I went to go see her, she couldn't talk. She was in so much pain, like her eyes were closed, and I couldn't even talk to her. And the doctors told us that, her body was shutting down, so we only had a couple of days with her. And I was like, in my head, I was thinking of everything that I regretted. I was like, man, I should have seen her more. I should have spent more time with her. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like, she can't go. Because growing up, I've always been fortunate to have both my grandparents on each side be a part of my life. My grandpa is 99 this year, and he's kicking goals. And I think I was just immature for thinking that they were going to live forever. But I never thought anything was ever going to happen to grandma. And I've never had anyone or a close relative pass away, so I didn't really know how to feel. So for a couple of days, we were just spending as much time with my grandma as possible, with all my cousins and stuff like that. My relatives were coming down overseas to, see her. And then my mum comes back into the picture. And it didn't help that everybody knew exactly what obviously went down between us. But they were like, all my relatives were pulling me aside and was like, don't cause drama. And I'm like, I have a bit more common sense than that. And then, she was just, I felt like she was playing victim the whole time, because, everybody also didn't know how to act around her, because she had been MIA for like a year and a half. And then, so my sisters kind of felt that pressure, my dad as well, and just started taking it out on me. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't need any of this. Like, right now, I think everybody should be focusing on grandma, but like, there was just so much drama going on. I felt like my life was like a K-pop drama. Like, it was insane. And then at the same time, the relationship I was in wasn't going very well. So I was in a very emotionally toxic relationship where I was essentially kind of absorbing a lot of the struggles and emotions that my ex-boyfriend was experiencing, and I was trying to be this pillar for him, but I honestly couldn't handle it, because I was going through the death of my grandma, my family hating on me for I don't know what reason, and the issues that he was experiencing at the time was just way too full on for me. I ended up breaking down, and I remember calling my best friend and was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Why does everybody keep relying on me and then turn their backs on me? Why is it every year, I just want to have a quiet year where I could focus on myself, but I can't, because I felt like I was being like a charity case to everybody else. And it wasn't like anyone else was kind of helping me develop personally as well. And another thing at that was I never cried. It was a thing growing up that my dad always taught me that if you cried, it was a sign of weakness. and crying, there was just no point to crying. So you're just wasting time, energy. So I just remember breaking down like to my best friend. I was like, I don't know what to do. Someone's trying to tell me that everything that I'm doing in my life is wrong. And, I ended up pulling through, but I just felt like empty and I felt lost. And again, New Year's rolls in and I'm like, man, this year again is going to be my year. But I did something differently. I ended up kind of just like looking back in my life and was like, all right, I need to start taking control and do things for myself now. And I ended up ending my relationship with my ex-boyfriend. And for a couple of months, I felt like I was kicking goals because like all this weight just literally fell off my shoulders. I didn't have that kind of responsibility anymore. And I was on talking terms with my family again. So I was like, oh yeah, it's good. But I was still like lost. And I was like, why aren't I as happy as I should be? I still got a career that was doing really well. I'm still traveling, but why do I feel so empty? And I was just trying to like explore kind of like all these options. But at the end of the day, it always came back to, I can't rely on anyone, I can only rely on myself. And then I remember I was with a friend and he was like to me, why don't you come to church? And at the time I was like, man, I don't have that. Like my problems aren't that bad. It's just stuff I just don't want to deal with. I don't have that many problems. And I was like, I ain't gonna go to church. But he asked a second time and he's like, I remember him saying, what's there to lose? Because he understood what I was kind of going through. So I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I'll just suss it out, whatever. As long as you're there, I'm cool. So I went in there and I felt so uncomfortable because I had no idea what I was doing and what to do. They started singing and I stood there like just blank and I was like, do I clap? Do I sing with everybody? The words up on the screen, but that's real weird because I don't want to do that. And the whole time I was like planning my escape. Like I was like, okay, cool. Like I don't know how long this is going to be, but I really want to go home. Anyways, ended up sitting down, hearing his pastor preach, and then like going into the church service, I had an open mind. And then as his pastor was preaching, I was like, man, like, why is everything that he's saying so relatable? Like, is someone trying to tell me something? And all the past years, I was always like, someone's trying to tell me something because I'm not doing anything right. But I never listened to that voice because I was like, nah, I can only rely on myself. And then I was like talking to my friend and I was like, yeah, like his message definitely resonated with me. And then they recommended me to go to the Potters House Church here in Thomastown because it was closer to home. And I was like, yeah, I'll suss it out. Honestly, I didn't think I was gonna go, but then I made a decision. I was like, look, I'm still feeling this way. I still feel lost. I feel like I don't have anything going for my life. It was a Wednesday night. Rocked up to church in my gym gear because I was like, yeah, after church, I'll go to the gym. And I just remember walking in, I was like, cool, I've got to be brave because, I'm doing this on my own. I don't have anyone to like kind of rely on. Walked in and everybody surprisingly was really nice. And they didn't kind of like throw the whole Jesus, God thing at me. Because that's one thing I was really scared of. I was like, oh, if these people like throw things that I don't know or don't really want to hear right now and make me feel uncomfortable, I'm gonna like plan my escape route or something like that just to get out of this place. But it wasn't even like that. I remember, Hannah came up to me and she was like, how are you going? What do you do? And we were just talking. It was like a normal conversation. Then my pastor came up to me, Bree came up to me, Jane, everybody came up to me. And then that night, again, pastor was preaching and I was like, man, someone's trying to tell me something because again, this message resonates with me. And I didn't want to admit that it was God. Like, I think I was quite stubborn still, but I was like, yeah, I'm not sure if I still want to listen, but I ended up, okay, because I felt comfortable around the people here, I came back for like 3 weeks. I didn't miss a Wednesday service, a Sunday service. And I think it was 3-4 weeks later, it was Wednesday night again, I ended up getting saved. I was like, all right, I admit it, God's talking to me. He's telling me everything that I'm doing is wrong. Yes, I'm gonna put my pride away, put it aside. I'm gonna listen to him. And FYI, being saved, I created my own urban Christian dictionary just to understand everything, because man, there's a lot of words to learn. And a lot of the times, I'd be staring blank at my pastor while he's preaching when he says certain words. I'm like, I gotta remember that because I'm gonna ask him what it is. But yeah, being saved means God's essentially reaching his hand out to you, and you're literally, you've taken it, you're holding on to it, and you're not gonna let go. And that's what I did. I was got saved, and the best part about it was after the service, everybody came to me and congratulated me. And it made me feel so good about myself, and I felt like something kind of jumped out of me. All this negativity jumped out of me. And I've heard a couple of people who've been saved in the past, drug addicts. When they've been saved, they stop taking drugs the next day, literally go cold turkey. And I can say the thing that kind of left me was my anger, my pride, and the swearing. Man, I had a potty mouth. It was real bad. My sisters can vouch for me when I say that. But I was happy. I felt so light, and I was I have purpose now. I've got someone that I can rely on now. And, the process of me getting saved or becoming a Christian wasn't instant. I had to learn everything. I'm a recent graduate of the foundations class to Christianity. Shout out to Bree and Ellery for taking that class, but it literally taught me all the foundations to how to read the Bible, why we do certain things, how we view certain things, what do certain things mean, and that really helped me build my foundations. Ended up getting baptized, which was another cool experience. Never thought I would get baptized, because I remember when I was younger, I got baptized in some Buddhist temple. I wasn't even Buddhist. My parents just forced me to do it. I never really understood what it was. And I think I had to eat a mandarin or something like that. It was real weird. But this experience, it was something that I understood, and it was awesome. And yeah, I just remember learning how to be patient. God's blessed me with a lot of things, but also taught me how to be patient and forgiving as well. So I ended up fixing my relationship with my mum. We have our boundaries still, but with our relationship fixed, it's kind of brought our whole family together, and it feels like how it used to be when I was growing up. And we're a lot happier now as a family, and it's just nice to be together again. So come 2020, I'm in Tokyo, Japan. New Year's Eve, I'm there with one of my best friends. And I was like, all right, cool, New Year's resolution, I don't need to make one. Literally it counted down, and I thank God, and I'm like, he's got me. And I'm so excited to see what he's got planned for me this year. So yeah, literally it's been a roller coaster, but I've definitely felt like a more happier person. I am happy that I've mended all the relationships with my mum, especially because we've never had a good relationship before. And yeah, so if you feel like you've connected with anything that I've said today, felt like you've had no hope or direction, I want to give you the same opportunity that I did the Wednesday night. You might not be in your gym clothes, but I was given the opportunity to pray the sinner's prayer, and I would like to lead you through a prayer tonight. So if you can please repeat after me. So Lord Jesus, I thank you for all that you've done. and I know that I'm a sinner. And I ask you to come into my life and give me a fresh start. I believe that you died for me and you rose again. And I thank you for all that you're going to do. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. So if you've prayed this prayer, you've made a really good decision. Please get in contact with the Thomastown Church. I can definitely vouch to say that my pastor is a really cool guy. The details are in the box below. Also, like and subscribe our YouTube channel just to get all the up-to-date content. And don't forget that our services are tomorrow at 10:30 and our evening 10:30 and our evening services are at 6 p.m. Again, I wanted to thank you all for watching. I also want to thank the Thomastown Church for everything that they've done for me. And finally, I thank God for everything that He's done in my life and given me hope and purpose now. So thanks again. Wendy out.